Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Finding It with Father podcast. I'm Father Jose Alvarez, your host, and I'm delighted to be with you and to guide you as we try to help you find it, find life, find God, find Jesus, who is already there in the midst of your life and everything that's going on in your life, and the important responsibilities also in those delightful pastimes that you have. And we're very grateful to Archbishop Wensky, who joined us last week and spoke to us about how he finds it with one of his pastimes, riding his motorcycle. A lot of people like that episode. Got some nice feedback. I had several people that said to me, I never knew that side of Archbishop Wensky. They said they saw a different side of him. And, I can tell you myself, even though I certainly knew about his motorcycle, there was one thing I discovered that I didn't know about him, and it's that he would fly planes, that he used to fly Cessnas. So, listen, this podcast is always trying to unveil. It's going to try to bring you some surprises. It's going to lift up the veil and show you some realities that you never noticed, that weren't catching your eye. That's the whole purpose of it, because that's what God is always trying to do with us. God is always trying to show us what is not so obvious to us. So, hit the subscribe button so that you can be part of this channel and you can be alerted when these episodes take place. Hit the like button, of course, and very importantly, hit the share button. Share these episodes with people because we want to help as many people as we can. We want to help people find life as much as possible. Now, today's topic, right? We're going to try to find it in marriage. And, last time when I previewed this episode, I said, well, how do you find it in marriage? How do you find life in marriage? And I said, if you're married, you know that not easily is the answer, because marriage is definitely not for wimps, right? Marriage is a wonderful, wonderful gift. It's a tremendous responsibility. And it's hard, like all things that are very valuable to us in life. They demand a lot of hard work. They demand a lot of trial and error, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, but also they yield tremendous, tremendous joys. Marriage, it's not for wimps. It's not for boys and girls. It's for mature men and women. And it's interesting from the onset for us to understand what it is that the church says about marriage, what canon law says about the reality of marriage. And it says that a marriage can only take place, can only thrive and be consistently sustained between a man and a woman. That's a tall statement, and it means more than gender. It means that the reality of marriage cannot thrive and sustain itself between a boy and a girl, or a woman and a boy, or a man and a girl. There is a basic level of affective maturity that needs to take place so that the reality can thrive and continue to sustain itself. Because otherwise, if that affective maturity is not consistently there, and we all have our ups and downs in terms of maturity, and I can tell you, we're all going to die a little bit immature. That is a given. But if there's not a basic level of it, well, you can have a wedding, but you may not wind up having a marriage. There would be a good attempt on the part of good people who intend to have a marriage, but they may be too handicapped effectively to live out that reality. And, for that reason, the church grants annulments. And that's what an annulment basically confirms, that here were two good people, right, who tried to make a go of it, but that whether it was one or both, right, they lacked the necessary capacity to have that reality play out, live out. Marriage is for, again, not those who will, like little kids, little kids in the face of trouble, they tend to wilt, right? They run away from it like nothing. Well, men and women, what's the difference between kids and men and women? Well, a mature man, a mature woman faces their struggles, perseveres through them, and tries to rise above them. And there's marriage for you. Now, as we go through this, and as I speak to you about this, you might say, well, Father, that's wonderful, but you're a priest. What do you know about marriage? You're not a married man. Well, you can't know anything about marriage. Not so fast, my friend. Certainly I don't claim, nor would any priest claim to know everything about marriage. Married people also, should not claim they know everything about marriage. If you've been married long enough, you know that you're kind of making it up as you go along. And what you do know is you know something about your marriage, but marriages are clearly not all the same. And, as priests, I can tell you, we deal with the reality often enough. Are you kidding me? We deal with the before, during, and after of marriage. We've got quite a spectrum of perspectives that we pick up. And so today, as we navigate through this topic, I'm really going to give you just a bit of a tip of the iceberg, a little bit of an appetizer, as it were, as to how to find life in the midst of this reality. We could dedicate, all the episodes of an entire season to this topic, but, I'm simply going to focus on a couple of realities that I think need to be paid attention to so that you can understand the reality of marriage. If the reality is not understood as it truly is, what is going to happen is that you're going to run into trouble. You're going to be living outside of reality. You'll be trying to live out your marriage in kind of la-la land. And I'm also going to try to point you towards an important key, an indispensable key. That's what's really going to help you find life in your marriage. So, the first thing that I will share with you, the first point I want to make is that your marriage, your marriage takes place. All marriages take place here, not beyond the Milky Way galaxy. Now, and even not if we're in our solar system, they don't take place outside of planet Earth. We all live on planet Earth. And life on planet Earth, we need to be profoundly aware, is full of changes, constant changes. Everything changes in this life. The weather changes from day to day. Sometimes it could change from hour to hour. Our bodies change. The economy changes. Governance changes. We just went through a very important election. And I can name a zillion other things. And, when changes take place, well, what do we do if we're sane? What we do is we make adjustments. We make adjustments. You know, if you walk into a place and it's bright and sunny, and when you're about to walk out of the place, it's pouring rain, well, you know, more than likely you don't walk out in the pouring rain. You either get an umbrella or you buy time and wait for the rain to clear. You make an adjustment. You know, if it's cold outside, you put on a jacket. And if it happens to be very warm, right, you take off the jacket. That's what we normally do. If you are wearing clothes, clearly you're not putting on the clothes in the morning that you were putting on 10 years ago or 20 or 30 years ago, not just because they're not fashionable, they wouldn't be, but it could be hazardous to your health or hazardous to your clothes. I can tell you that if I try to wear anything that I wore 20 years ago, they're going to have to call 911 on me, or the clothes are going to explode. They're going to tear. Something's going to go wrong because they don't fit anymore, right? And we can go on and on. Life is full of adjustments that we need to make, and we make them. Sometimes in marriage, we tend to be creatures of habit. And so the challenge is that we tend to put the marriage on autopilot. And if you've been married a while, you know that there are a lot of different stages in a marriage. The honeymoon phase and the phase between the phase thereafter the honeymoon and before a first kid comes along, everything changes radically. And if a second kid happens to come along, probably not that big a change. But hang on for dear life, because if a third kid happens to come into the picture, then the circus begins. And that's when the madness really starts ensuing. That's when you start confusing names and you say, hey, Ashley, Timmy, hey, you, get over here, right? And kids eventually grow up. You have the empty nest. They leave. And that's a totally different phase of marriage. And of course, the years pass on and our bodies begin to break down. And, the last stages of our life, we're just hanging on for dear life. We're living, struggling to find quality of life. We don't want to burden others. We need to be supported. We don't want to lose our independence. You kind of know it. You've whether you've lived it already or you notice that in, your loved ones, you can see that you can't put it on autopilot. And a lot of times marriages struggle because people are creatures of habit and they don't make the necessary adjustments. They don't read the signs of the times in themselves, in their spouse, in the family dynamic. And they're responding out of sync to the needs that are truly there. So, the first thing you need to be aware of is that, no, it's not going to stay the same way forever. It can't. It's impossible. You live on earth, not somewhere out there. Your marriage isn't taking place in a Hollywood movie or, I don't know, on some rocket ship, on some space station out there somewhere, right here, where we need to make adjustments to the changes that constantly take place. Now, the second thing that I want to point out to you that I think it's profoundly important for couples to be aware of is, you look at the palms of your hands. Now, you may not, looking upon them without a microscope, you may not be able to determine much of anything, but I have news for you. You kind of know it. I'll remind you. We all have unique fingerprints. We are a unique creation, a unique work of art. There's never been anybody like us. There will never be anybody like us again. In many cases, that's probably a good thing, right? Some would say that about me, certainly. But you can't duplicate people. Consequently, you also cannot duplicate marriages. There may be similarities, right? And there's much that we learn from, particularly the marriage of our parents, all the things that have been modeled for us. But even if we try to imitate some of those qualities and whatnot, it's impossible to replicate their marriages. That is not what God wants. If God wanted us to be different than we are, he would have designed this differently. But we're all very uniquely designed. And it is so important to bear that in mind, that what we have going on is art in marriage. Marriage is an art. And yes, we love art. And what can we say about art? Art is beautiful, right? Art is inspiring. Art is life-giving. We marvel at any work of art. But I can tell you as somebody, listen, before I became a priest later on in life when I was 42 years old. Prior to that, I taught and I coached in schools as an educator. But all of my studies are in the fine arts. A lot of you know that already. I studied to be an actor and did that, in a limited basis for some time. But yes, I'm quite familiar with the arts in general. And like I just said, yes, art is beautiful, art is inspiring, art is, life-giving. Say all those wonderful things about it. Have you ever observed what the artistic process is like to arrive at that finished product? I can tell you that it's far less than beautiful, far less than inspiring, far less than life-giving. It's like medication-inducing quite often. Just pop into, and it doesn't matter what art form you're dealing with. Pop into whether it's drama or music or a painting or sculpture, whatever. Pop into a play rehearsal, for example, and watch what the actors are doing. It's a disaster. They forget their lines. They go to the wrong place on stage. Sometimes they pick up the wrong prop, right? Sometimes the prop they're supposed to pick up is not there. If you go to a concert rehearsal or any kind of music rehearsal, sometimes the instruments are off. They need to be, tuned appropriately. Sometimes the harmonies are off. The tempo is off. Conductors or music directors are going crazy. They're saying, hey, slow the tempo down or pick it up. You ever watch some dude working on a canvas when he starts out and you look at what's there on the canvas and you say, what is going on? What did this person have for dinner last night? This thing looks like indigestion on the canvas. Where's the beauty? What is this about? It takes a while for the creation to unfold itself completely. If you're watching a sculpture working on anything, my God, you look at something that's kind of amorphous, right? In front of him or her, and what you have around on the floor is like in the remnants of multiple atomic blasts. It's the artistic process is sloppy, it's chaotic, it's conflictive, it is incomplete, tremendously incomplete. And so that is part of the process. That's normal. Nothing to panic about, nothing to worry about. A lot of times the expectations in marriage are off because marriage encompasses all those realities and all those dynamics as well. Of course, I say that to couples all the time when I'm prepping them for marriage. I say, look, it's going to get sloppy. It's going to get conflictive. It's going to get chaotic, right? It's going to look like a war zone and feel like a war zone at times. Don't panic. It plays out, if you stick with it like a good artist would, plays out quite beautifully. One of my favorite chapters or passages in the entire Bible is the creation account in Genesis. You know, God, by the way, I have news for you in case you haven't noticed or in case you've never conceived it. God is an artist. He's the supreme artist because he's the creator, right? Creativity has everything to do with him. All creativity flows from him. And watch how the supreme artist works. Read that first chapter of Genesis. Read the creation account. It's wonderful, and you're familiar with it. How God creates everything, right, in the 7 days that are described there, and you know, save the last day, right, when the creation is complete. You know, read carefully through what God makes each day, and you know, it'll read something along the lines of, and on this day God made this and that and the other thing. And then at the very end, at the end of the description of what he made each day, it reads, and God saw everything that he made, and he saw that it was good. He saw that it was good. Hey, I have news for you. It was incomplete. It was incomplete, but it was good. God could see in the midst of the incompletion, in the midst of the sloppiness, in the midst of whatever may not have looked like had great form, God could see the beauty, right, that was in the making, the beauty that was coming to greater and greater fruition. And this is important. This is an important quality to foster and develop in marriage, to be able to see in the midst of this sometimes confusing, chaotic mystery, that there is beauty in the making. You know, cherishing the mystery is very important. I'll never forget, I think it was my first couple of years of priesthood, there was a man, I was in a different parish. I was at this parish hearing confessions, and this very elderly man came to confession. He was old, could have been like a waiter at the Last Supper kind of thing, you know. And I'll never forget that he said to me, he said, Father, I adore my wife. And, you know, if she were to die, I wouldn't know what to do with myself. My life would have no purpose. And he said to me, Father, I look at her and I have no idea who the heck she is. By the way, he wasn't senile. He was totally with it. But I remember thinking, I kind of chuckled when he said that. And later on, I thought, boy, you know, there's wisdom right there. You know, so many years of marriage, and he certainly cherishes what is there, but there is so much that he's still yet to figure out, so much yet that he needs to bring greater completion to. Now, all of this may sound fine and dandy, but the only way to be able to find it, the only way to find, you know, this cherishing of a mystery, being able to, this ability to see the beauty that may not be so obvious, well, we need help doing that. You need his help. You need God's help. Because you see, God has everything, and this is the key. The key to finding it, the key to finding life in marriage is to turn to God. God is part of your marriage. I say marriage is about two. I say that at every wedding. Not really. It's about three. Hopefully 1, 2, 3. And the reason being because the vows that a couple makes, right, to love each other in good times and bad, sickness and health, all the days of their life, right, all of that, it's impossible for human beings to do. The vows are always an expression of the couple's intention, but it's never an expression of their capacity. The vows don't express human love. The vows express divine love. And couples need to plug into God's wisdom, God's power, God's resilience, that is what capacitates them to live out what they promise to one another. So it's all about turning to God so that God, through the husband, the wife, can continue to complete this beautiful, beautiful work that he has begun. So that's just the appetizer. That is an appetizer. We may come back to this topic on a future episode at some point because there's so much that could be said about marriage, but I leave you with that as an appetizer to hopefully help you, point you on your way to finding new life in marriage if you're preparing for marriage, to help you bear this in mind as you approach your wedding. And as I get ready to tell you what our next episode is going to be all about, I am going to, as always, thank our sponsors, without whose support we couldn't, continue to build up, right, the great work and the resources that we need to do the great work that we're trying to do in a variety of ways. All of the funding that we get from our sponsors goes to build up our reserves, right? The new creations, the renovations, and the outreach of what we do here, the podcast. Again, as I said last week and last week's episode, the podcast is part of our outreach to whoever can benefit from it. So we encourage you to consider becoming a sponsor, whether you become a supporting sponsor or a presenting sponsor. You can see the basic sponsorship packages that are there and the elite sponsorship packages. If you want to inquire about any of this, all you have to do is contact Denise Roca, and she will be more than glad to explain to you what they encompass and to make the arrangement with you. So again, thanks to all our sponsors. And next week's episode, we're going to release on the Friday before the it's one of my favorite holidays. I think it's one of our favorite holidays of the entire year, before Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is such an important holiday, not just because we get to eat well, real well, and not just because, there's good football on and, we take a break for a few days. And of course, that there's tremendous shopping that's about to take place thereafter, right? Yeah, it's great because of all those things, but it's great more than anything because of what giving thanks does. Giving thanks to God, giving thanks to others is so unbelievably important in our lives. So we're going to explore on the next episode how to find it in thanksgiving, in giving thanks. We're gonna have quite a few people on the episode. I'm gonna interview quite a few kids and some of our faculty members, some parents, to hear their perspectives as to what it is that they're grateful for, why they think that it's so important to give thanks. And then, of course, I'm gonna give you my 2 cents worth. So in the meantime, I thank you, as always, for joining us on this podcast. Keep trying to find it. Keep trying to find new life. Keep trying to find God, Jesus, who is there, trying to unveil the life, the surprises that you may be missing. So until then, we'll catch you next time.